Floor for 25 years without a single major incident. You know what my reward was? A cardboard box for my belongings, and a handshake from someone who'd never set foot in the foundry. My name is Marcus O'Connell, 61 years old, lead foreman at Ironclad Foundries in Gary, Indiana. We forge steel components for construction equipment, precision work where even a millimeter's deviation could mean disaster. That Tuesday morning, Cheryl from Human Resources called me into the boardroom. Greg Morrison, the new operations director who'd been with us all of 6 months, sat there with a tablet open, scrolling through spreadsheets. Clean hands, pressed suit. The guy had barely glanced at the molten steel pouring lines, except during his obligatory safety walkthrough. Marcus, Cheryl began, sliding a folder across the polished table. We're implementing some strategic changes. Greg nodded along, offering vague phrases about market pressures and competitive restructuring. I opened the folder. Severance package. 2 weeks to train my replacement. Half my pension would vest immediately. The other half would trickle in monthly payments. The company logo at the top of the page looked unfamiliar. They'd redesigned it last year without consulting anyone on the floor. Your replacement starts Wednesday, Cheryl added casually, as though announcing the cafeteria menu. Evan Carter. He's got an MBA from Purdue. Very promising. I closed the folder and stared at the grain of the wood table. 25 years. No major incidents. 412 employees had gone home safe under my watch, day after day. I'd built the safety protocols they still used, implemented the quality control systems they relied on, trained every supervisor and technician on that floor. I understand, I said. Greg looked relieved. Cheryl's smile didn't reach her eyes. That night, I drove home the long way, past the abandoned warehouses where the old steel mills once stood. My grandfather had worked there before the industry collapsed. He always told me, Marcus, a man's worth is measured by what he leaves behind, not what he takes. I'd left something behind at Ironclad. A system, a culture, a legacy. And now I had 2 weeks to hand it over to a kid who wouldn't understand what he was dismantling. When I got home, I called my old friend Hank, who'd retired 5 years ago. They're letting you go, Hank asked. Bastards, he muttered. You gonna fight it? No, I said. But they'll learn soon enough. Some lessons can't be taught in 2 weeks. I hung up and looked at my boots by the door. 25 years of soot and grime that no amount of scrubbing could erase. They had no idea what they were losing. I started at Ironclad, when my daughter Claire was just 3 years old. Marlene and I had been married 10 years, and that job meant stability, health insurance, a future. 12-hour shifts at first, then shift supervisor after 4 years, assistant foreman after 9, and finally lead foreman after old Joe Harper passed away. The foundry was my second home. I knew every furnace by its hum. Could tell when the blast temperature was off before any gauge registered it. I could spot a structural flaw in a casting from across the room, smell when the cooling tanks needed recalibration, feel when the air pressure was uneven by a fraction of a sigh. Marlene used to joke that I cared more about the foundry than our house. Maybe she was right. After she passed 5 years ago, I poured everything into the job. Holidays, weekends, snowstorms when half the crew couldn't make it in. The company changed ownership twice during my time. First was Midwest Steelworks in 2010. They kept things steady. Then Titan Capital acquired us in 2021. Private equity guys with algorithms and efficiency metrics. They started trimming excess capacity immediately. I noticed the changes slowly: budget cuts for preventive maintenance, cheaper raw material suppliers, longer intervals between equipment overhauls. They replaced 4 of my best welders with contractors, reduced inventory of critical spare parts, and began pushing production targets higher every quarter. 6 months ago, Greg Morrison arrived with his MBA and his spreadsheets. He called a floor meeting his first week. Pete, Maggie, Sam from maintenance, and Russell, who ran the night shift. We met in the parking lot after work. They're going to start cutting corners, I told them, and the new kid doesn't know what he doesn't know. What do you want us to do, Marcus? Pete asked. We can't ignore the new boss. No, I agreed. But you can document everything. Keep your own records. And if things start going sideways with the equipment, I handed each of them my personal phone number written on index cards. Call me. Not management. Me. I spent my final day clearing out my locker. Evan was already sitting at my desk rearranging things. I handed him my keys. "Any last advice?" he asked, barely looking up from his tablet. "Yeah," I said. "Listen to the metal. The furnaces will tell you if you pay attention." He smiled politely, clearly not understanding. I walked out without ceremony. No party. No cake. No speech. 25 years ended with a handshake from Cheryl in Human Resources and a parking lot exit badge that deactivated as soon as I drove away. But I wasn't done with Ironclad. Not really. I was just waiting. 3 weeks after I left, Pete called me. "They're changing the maintenance schedule on the cooling tanks," he said, voice low like he was hiding in the supply closet, pushing it from daily to every other day. "Document it," I said. "Note any temperature fluctuations, any leaks, any unusual sounds." 2 days later, Sam from maintenance called. They denied my requisition order for the backup generator. Said we could wait until the quarterly inventory. I kept a log of every call, every change, every corner cut. At 4 weeks, I decided to reach out formally. I wrote an email to Greg and Cheryl, professional, and to the point. "I've heard concerning reports about changes to safety and maintenance protocols. Having overseen these systems for over 2 decades, I'd be happy to consult regarding the potential risks these modifications might introduce." Cheryl replied within the hour. "And thank you for your concern, Marcus. The transition has been smooth, and Evan has implemented several efficiency improvements already. We'll certainly reach out if we need your insight." Corporate speak for stay away. At 6 weeks, the first incident happened. Minor. A valve blew on the number 2 furnace, causing a 4-hour shutdown. No one hurt. Then a small coolant leak in week 7. Then 2 separate electrical issues in week 8. Russell called me after each incident. Yeah. The new guy's blaming the equipment, Marcus. Says it's all outdated and poorly maintained." My blood boiled. That equipment had run flawlessly under proper care. By week 10, I couldn't stand it anymore. I drove to the plant during lunch break and waited in the parking lot. When Pete came out, I waved him over to my truck. "How bad is it really?" I asked. Pete looked around before answering. "Bad. Production's down 20%. They fired Sam last week. Said he was resistant to change. And Evan's got his fraternity buddy running maintenance now. Kid couldn't tell a welding torch from a blowtorch. Anyone been hurt?" That was my biggest fear. Not yet. But Russell almost lost an arm when a safety latch failed on the crane. Evan wrote it up as operator error. I made a decision then. I knew people at the State Industrial Safety Board. One call could trigger an inspection. The next morning I made that call, explained my concerns, my history with the plant, the specific changes that worried me. The inspector, a woman named Linda Hayes, wrote detailed notes. "We'll conduct an unannounced inspection within the next 2 weeks." She assured me. I felt satisfied. The system would correct itself. 3 days later, Pete called again, panic in his voice. "They know, Marcus. Someone told management you were behind the inspection request. Greg's going ballistic." My stomach dropped. "What's happening?" "They've got us working overtime cleaning everything up, falsifying maintenance logs. The production lines shut down so they can fix all the problems before the inspection." Then came the legal letter, hand-delivered to my house by courier. Ironclad Foundries was accusing me of malicious interference with business operations in violation of non-disclosure agreements. "Defer to next quarter per budget constraints." "Why are you showing me this, Russell?" I asked. "This could cost you your job." Russell's expression hardened. "Maggie's nephew got hurt yesterday. Guardrail failed. The one Evan said wasn't critical to replace. Kid's 19. Lost 3 fingers. They're calling it operator error. Making him sign papers while he was still on pain meds." My hands clenched involuntarily. "They can't do that." "They are doing it," Russell said. "And it's only a matter of time before something worse happens." After Russell left, I sat in my kitchen for hours. The evidence spread across my table. I was torn between fury and responsibility. These weren't just statistics on a spreadsheet. These were lives. People I'd worked alongside for decades. Families I knew. I picked up my phone to call the safety board again, then stopped. Another inspection wouldn't be enough. Ironclad would clean up temporarily, pay another fine, continue the cycle. No. This required a different approach. I called Pete, then Maggie, then 6 other trusted veterans from the floor. We arranged to meet at Hank's house the next day, neutral territory. When everyone arrived, I laid out what I'd learned, showed them the evidence Russell had provided. "So, what do we do?" Pete asked when I finished. "Go to the media?" I shook my head. "Not yet. First we need leverage."
"What kind of leverage?" Maggie asked.
"The kind that hits their bottom line," I said. "I'm going to need records of every shortcut, every failure, every near miss since I left. Documented, dated, photographed if possible. They'll fire anyone they catch collecting that information," Hank pointed out. "I know," I said. "That's why we need to be smart about this. And patient." I looked around at these people, skilled workers who deserved better than being treated as disposable parts in a corporate machine. "Give me 2 weeks," I said. "And whatever you do, keep your eyes open and stay safe." For the next 2 weeks, I became a ghost at Ironclad. I never set foot on the property, but my presence was felt. Pete and the others fed me information daily. Shift reports, equipment failures, safety incidents. I compiled everything meticulously, building a case that couldn't be dismissed. Meanwhile, I made 3 key moves. First, I reached out to George Lawson, a former client who now worked for Ironclad's biggest customer, Apex Construction Solutions. We met for coffee at a diner 20 miles from the plant. "Marcus, good to see you," George said, shaking my hand. "Been wondering where you disappeared to." "Forced retirement," I said. "But that's not why I asked to meet." It was Greg Morrison himself. "Marcus," he said, strain evident in his voice, "we have a situation at the plant." "So I've heard," I replied calmly. The shutdown had been all over the plant group chat by midnight. "Look, I'll be direct. We need your expertise. The main furnace is down. Orders are backing up, and our maintenance team can't identify the problem. That's because you fired Sam, who maintained that furnace for 15 years. I pointed out. Greg's sigh was heavy. "Can we set aside the past for now? The company is willing to bring you in as a consultant to get us operational again." "I'm listening." $400 per hour cash. No questions asked about how you fix it. We just need it running by end of week. I almost laughed. They thought this was about money. "I'll be there in an hour," I said. "But I have conditions. 1, I bring my own team. Pete, Russell, and Maggie. 2, I have complete authority over repair decisions and parts orders. 3, I want access to all maintenance records for the past 6 months. Greg hesitated, then relented. "Fine, whatever it takes." When I walked into the plant an hour later, the floor was in chaos. Operators standing idle. Managers huddled in corners whispering urgently. The massive furnace sitting silent and dark. Evan approached me immediately. "Thank God you're here. It's worse than I thought," he said. I nodded. "Let's see it." As I inspected the furnace, everything became clear. Multiple system failures caused by months of neglected maintenance. Exactly what I'd warned about. I turned to Greg, who was hovering nearby. "I can fix this, but first I need to show you something." I pulled out my phone and opened my email. I just sent this report to Titan Capital's executive team, the State Safety Board, and Apex Construction Solutions. It details every safety violation, every corner cut, and every risk created by the policies you've implemented. Greg's face drained of color. "You can't do that." "I already have," I said. "Now, do you want this furnace fixed or not?" 3 days. That's how long it took to fix the furnace, a repair that would have been a simple maintenance issue if they'd followed my original schedules. During those 3 days, Ironclad experienced a whirlwind of consequences. Apex Construction suspended their orders pending a full quality review. The safety board arrived for another inspection. This one much more thorough than the last, and Titan Capital sent their own operations team to assess the situation. By day 3, Greg was gone, reassigned to corporate headquarters. Evan remained, but in a reduced role, reporting to a new operations director, who'd been dispatched from the parent company. That new director, Thomas Whitfield, called me into the office after we got the furnace running again. "Impressive work," he said. "The corporate team has reviewed your documentation thoroughly." I waited, saying nothing. "We're implementing a complete overhaul of maintenance and safety protocols at all our facilities," Thomas continued, "and we'd like to offer you a position Director of Manufacturing Operations for Ironclad Foundries." I considered the offer. "At what salary?" Thomas named a figure 35% higher than I'd been making before. And complete autonomy over maintenance schedules and safety procedures. Within budget constraints, yes. I shook my head. That's the problem. Safety can't be budgeted quarter by quarter. I stood to leave, then paused. I'll consult. 3 days a week. My hourly rate. I'll help you rebuild the systems I created. Train your people properly, and get production back to where it should be. But I won't be an employee again. Thomas considered this, then nodded. Acceptable. I didn't go back for the title or the money. I went back for Pete and Maggie and Russell, and all the others who deserved to work in a safe environment. I went back to rebuild what I'd spent 25 years creating. When I walked onto the floor the next Monday, the machines were already humming more smoothly. They knew their old caretaker had returned.